Joining me right now, Joan McCarter of Daily Kos, who comes on the program quite often and who covers politics and is a wealth of information when we're talking particularly about the Senate. Republicans claiming they want bipartisanship. Mitch McConnell making it clear his goal is to obstruct. And we keep hearing about the bipartisan infrastructure bill that a whole bunch of senators have come up with, and yet it doesn't seem like it's anything that's going to meet what Democrats and certainly progressives would like to see. Joan McCarter, welcome back to the program.
Hi, Michaelangelo. I'm thrilled to be here.
Great to have you back. So we have this group of bipartisan senators who came forth with this weak infrastructure proposal. It falls short of the spending Biden insisted on. He sent Shelley Moore Capito away, right? Because she didn't come up with a plan that met his standards. And it's unlikely Republicans are even going to support this, right? Because this is just a bipartisan group, just a few Republicans on that side.
Right. It's your usual suspects, Susan Collins, Mitt Romney. And what they're coming up with so far doesn't look like it's anything that Biden would agree to. They want to steal COVID relief money. State and local governments are really unhappy with that idea since that's their money. And they're still talking about things like user fees for people driving electric vehicles, which not only is sort of defeating the purpose in trying to come up with a less fossil fuel dependent infrastructure, and also just doesn't raise that much money compared to what they really need. So it's not going to go anywhere, and it's really hard to imagine that Republicans do think it's going to go anywhere, that they're not doing this for any reason other than to continue to delay the process.
They always come up with this idea to raise money that's about raising money off of the backs of working people instead of the wealthiest Americans and corporations who are not paying their fair share of taxes, which is what Biden wants to do. So they were focused on the gas tax, which then means that, you know, everybody is going to be paying higher taxes on gasoline. And meanwhile, then Susan Collins, right? She said,
yeah, and that particularly hits rural voters, rural people, the poorer people, low-income people who don't have access to transportation as easily. It's really a regressive tax, which is why Biden didn't want to go there.
And then Susan Collins, I really got just a, you know, when I say a kick out of, just, you know, a kick in the way that Susan Collins just embarrasses herself every single day. She then complained that the gas tax wasn't even good enough because people with electric cars are going to get off scot-free. She called them free riders because they're going to be using the roads and yet they're not paying the gas tax, which I just found ludicrous.
But very Susan Collins. It is ludicrous. I mean, if anything, we should be encouraging people and certainly companies to start using electric vehicles, and more companies are. So this is going to be punishing everybody from the U.S. Postal Service to Amazon to everybody, every other company out there that's changing its fleet over to electric. Which they should be doing because it's the right thing to do.
Right, you should be getting a tax credit for switching over to electric. And besides that, people are still paying taxes on electricity, right? So the whole thing just seemed, yes, like Susan Collins coming up with a concern that's not really a concern, but something to throw a roadblock into things.
She's very good at that. In fact, you might look at it and think that Mitch McConnell picks her purposefully to do this, to be the one who pretends that she's going to be bipartisan, and then to come up with these ridiculous things to keep from being bipartisan. It's sort of become a game with them.
Yeah. And it's been going on for a very long time. Biden didn't fall
Mm-hmm.
for it with the COVID relief bill. They really
Thank
tried
goodness.
hard, right? But what do you think's happening here? Is Biden um, is he going to stick to the same kind of strategy, or was he really trying here to see if something could happen? It seems like it's prolonged. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
It is prolonged. This has been going on, I think, for far too long. But that's on my side. Maybe he needed this much time. The other side of it is, has Biden been doing this to finally convince Joe Manchin and Krysten Sinema that there will not be Republican votes? That they're just going to have to give up this idea of getting Republicans on board, particularly 10 Republicans on board, to any major package. So it's possible that he's been stringing this out to prove to them this is not going to work.
And
It's possible.
Manchin and Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin were among the Democrats in the lead of these negotiations. And, I guess that was his way, what you're saying, of saying, okay, you put it together and do it. Tell us about their positions on the negotiation, how it differs from their Democratic colleagues.
Well, Manchin has directly said before, and I don't know that he's keeping up with this as of today. He's looking a little cagier on it, but he has previously said he is not going to do another budget reconciliation bill. That's the way that Democrats can use procedure to push a bill through with just a simple majority of votes, with just 51 votes. Manchin says, okay, we did that for COVID relief. It was an emergency. I'm not going to do it again. It looks like he maybe has backed down from that a little bit. In terms of specifics that either Sinema or Manchin want, they're not telling us. We don't know other than that it has to be bipartisan. They're not saying it has to have this component, it has to have this component, it has to have the child care, it has to have the electrical vehicle charging stations, it has to have these climate proposals. They're not saying any of that. We don't know what they're looking for. I think their primary concern probably is how it's being paid for, but we don't know that either because they're not actually saying. This is one of the things that's terribly frustrating with these two. For instance, Manchin's opposition to the For the People Act, he's not saying what he has a problem with in that bill. He's just saying he's not going to support it. And we're getting the same problem with them on infrastructure. We don't know what they're for. We don't know what they're against. We only know that they think that they ought to have Republicans in on it.
And we don't know what their true motivations are, and there's so much discussion about it, and it may be very different for each of them. And there's so much speculation, and are they really going to stick to this in the end, or is this all a game? And Sinema is particularly hard to figure out in her various actions. I mean, she didn't even then vote on the commission vote after she was urging Republicans to vote for it, and then said she had a family
and
issue.
Then came up with an extremely lame excuse for why she wasn't there 4 days after the fact. It was very strange. I don't know.
I mean,
sometimes I get the sense that she thinks that she can be the next John McCain because she's from Arizona. She can be the maverick, and maybe by being this quixotic can get Arizona voters behind her. That's all I can think of with Sinema. She's a mystery. Manchin, I think, is primarily ego.
Right. And he loves the attention. And it's interesting how he goes into these meetings, too, with people who are urging him to do the right thing. He met with civil rights leaders and voting rights activists last week. And he even had a call, I think it was like a few days before, with Senator Warnock, and they always come out saying that it seemed hopeful, or it seemed like we could get somewhere. And he always comes out saying he hasn't changed his mind.
Right.
And you wonder, like, is that just part of his game too? I don't know.
I think it is. Well, or he just skips the meetings. Today he skipped a meeting. Schumer has specifically invited Texas Democrats, House representatives from Texas, the Democrats, to come to the Senate luncheon today to talk to them about the voting suppression bill that Texas has been trying to pass, and to talk about the need for S1 or some kind of voter rights protections. And Manchin and I believe Sinema just didn't show up at the luncheon. That's what they get for warning them that this was coming. They should have kept their mouths shut and tricked them into being there.
They're both getting pressure in their states. I mean, again, very different states and very different, factors they have to contend with. She really has a base of her party that helped to elect her that is very angry. And what is perplexing is that I don't know where she thinks she's playing to, because even independents and some Republicans have now shifted away. I mean, all that's left in the Republican Party there is the Trump Party in Arizona. But she has some very real pressure coming from Democrats in her state and Latinos who've been active in organizing in the past couple of election cycles.
And nationally, the entire LGBTQ community, which, because she is the only senator who has ever openly identified as bi, we were all really excited for that. And we thought, great, she's one of us. No, she's she's letting Republicans filibuster the Equality Act. It's inexplicable. And she's really courting a primary campaign.
It's appalling as someone who has the support of the Human Rights Campaign, the Victory Fund. I mean, they all tout her, these gay groups, as one of our own, and she is the person standing in the way of getting the Equality Act passed. And I mean, I don't know what the threshold is for a gay group to support you if you're openly gay, if you're working against the gay community. I don't think I think it should stop there.
That would be it.
And then Manchin faced, a protest at his office in West Virginia. William Barber and his powerful movement, the Poor People's Campaign, I mean, they marched on his office making the case. Again, he has very different set of circumstances in West Virginia, but majority of West Virginians support the very bills, the very, actions that Biden wants to take, the For the People Act, the Voting Rights Act, the ending the filibuster. So it's perplexing there as well.
It's very perplexing. And although there isn't a large Black community in West Virginia, it's a very active politically community in West Virginia. And they've been trying to remind Manchin that his last victory margin was not that large. And without that 3.5% of Black voters, he may not have made it over the line. Whether he's listening to that, whether he's intending to run again, we don't know. He could be looking to the other side because he has been getting support from the Koch network, from Americans for Prosperity. They've been lauding him on radio in West Virginia. So maybe he's looking ahead and thinking it'll be a lot more lucrative for him on the other side if he sides with the forces of evil in this.
Right, but
I don't like to attribute selfishness to Democrats, but he's sort of asking for it.
Well, now Biden has given the group 10 days. The White House has given the group 10 days to come up with a plan. And I mean, at that point, then he's really saying to Manchin, you're going to have to live with thwarting this, or go through budget reconciliation in terms of the infrastructure bill.
I think so. And at this point, actually, with the latest developments today, it looks as though budget reconciliation is going to be the way it happens anyway. A big core of Democratic senators said, look, we can only do this two ways. We can only do this if there is this bipartisan agreement, should it happen, coupled with budget reconciliation to do the stuff that really matters to us, the climate stuff that is very important, the child care stuff that is so critical. And it looks as though Schumer has greenlit that, and the House is starting to work on it, so that there will be a budget reconciliation component to this.
And that will just be the things Republicans can't get their head around. And they may not get their head around anything, but...
Right. I'm skeptical that they'll support any of this when it comes down to it, because 10 Republicans is a lot. And I really, we've only ever seen, what's the most we've seen? How many voted for the January 6th Commission? 6 or 7?
Well, and this is all while Mitch McConnell, who has enormous discipline from Republicans in his caucus, is saying that he's intent on undermining the bill. So is John Thune, who's also in the leadership.
Right. They're never very private in saying, we oppose this and we're going to do everything in our power to end it. I mean, Mitch McConnell has said, I am 100% committed to seeing Biden's agenda fail. I don't know how much more clearly he can put it.
Well, then he told
at least they tell us what they're doing. It's just a matter of people sort of hearing that and grasping what it means.
And then he told Hugh Hewitt, the right-wing radio host, that he was proud of his achievement of stopping Obama from appointing a Supreme Court justice after Scalia died, Merrick Garland. And then he plans to stop Biden's nominees, too, if he takes back the Senate. I mean, they're sending a red alert to Democrats right there.
They're doing everything they can. Even in 2023, even the year before an election year, McConnell says if there's a vacancy, he thinks he can block it.
Yeah.
I don't know how much more of a siren he can be sounding here for Democrats. And I don't really understand why their hair isn't on fire about it.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing we're all sort of perplexed about. Okay, there's Manchin and Sinema, and there also are others who are not so keen on getting rid of the filibuster, but we don't see those who are really, pounding hard about the urgency here. We just don't see it.
No. And, on the January 6th Commission, this morning Pelosi indicated that the thing she would like most is for the Senate to take it up again. And the Senate's not going to take it up again. If they do, it's not going to pass. If they let Susan Collins water it down so much, maybe then it would pass, but it probably still wouldn't get 10 Republican votes.
Right.
And we're already at the middle of June, and the deadline in the legislation for creating that commission for it to come up with its final report was December 31st of this year. If we go one more round of trying to do this through the Senate, it's going to be September before a commission can possibly be put together, and then they would have the deadline of December 31st because Republicans would insist on that. That's not enough time for it to do the job. So I don't understand why Pelosi is not grasping that, not acting on that, not saying, okay, right now we have the select committee and it's open-ended and it can go as long as it needs to.
Right. And
when it was an attack on her building, when they were there hunting for her specifically, it's mind-boggling.
Right. and you'll have witnesses, and it'll be on TV, and you'll get everything out of it that you need to get out of it for people to see. And they're going to say a bipartisan commission is all rigged anyway. So do what you have to do.
Whatever happens, Republicans are going to say it's rigged.
Right.
And the American people need to see this. So there we go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Joan, it is always great to have you on the program to talk about all of this. Really great.
It is always great to be on the program.
Yes, and we look forward to having you back. Joan McCarter is senior political writer at Daily Kos. You can follow her on Twitter at Joan McCarter.